I'm Bo Johnson. Today is December 25th, 2025. Welcome to YesToHellWith.com and Merry Christmas. An attorney wrote to me yesterday and said that the report, which reveals ChatGPT's concession that the federal government operates the income tax laws by using fraudulent presumption, is well done. You have 5 more days to get the $1 report on jamesbowersjohnson.com. Now let's talk about David Ingalls. David Ingalls was not a criminal. He was a 55-year-old widower in Johnson City, Tennessee, living on $770 a month in SSI disability payments issued in part because he had difficulty making sound decisions. He lived quietly. He lived alone. He lived on the margins of society until the system noticed him. David did not seek out crime. Crime came to him disguised as opportunity. Facing foreclosure and desperate for money, David agreed to help an acquaintance cash a few checks. He asked the obvious question, "Why don't you cash them yourselves?" He was told that Walmart had limits as to the number of checks that one could cash on a daily basis. That explanation sounded reasonable. David accepted it in good faith. Then came the moment that should have ended the story. Standing at the Walmart counter in Virginia, David did what criminals do not do. He asked the cashier if the checks were legitimate. Not once, not twice, but 3 times. Each time the cashier said yes. The checks were made payable to David. They appeared legitimate. So he cashed them once. He kept $100, that was his fee, and handed the rest of the money over. Then he went home. The next day he was asked to do it again. David said no. That refusal says everything you need to know about intent. But intent is not what modern justice weighs. When the authorities dismantled the stolen check scheme, they did not distinguish between the planners and the pawns. They did not separate the calculating from the cognitively impaired. They arrested everyone. David Ingalls was swept into the same net. There was no trial. There was no jury. There was a 15-minute meeting with a court-appointed lawyer who rushed through a 30-page plea agreement and delivered a familiar ultimatum. Plead guilty and receive less time, or go to trial and risk everything. David tried to explain. He spoke of his disability. He said he didn't believe he had done anything wrong. But he was not heard, not by his defense attorney. Overwhelmed and frightened, David pled guilty. He was sentenced to 36 months in prison. Now, on a personal note, I know this case is real because I was placed in a cell with David Ingalls. I read the 30-page plus plea agreement. I got to know the man. David is one of those people who lives a desperate life, not because he is dangerous, but because he is vulnerable. He is slow, trusting, and painfully sincere. He is not cunning. He is not calculating. He is not capable of the kind of intent the law pretends that he had. Those within the legal system who played a major role in his conviction, the prosecutor, the judge, the machinery surrounding them, they did not give a damn about David Ingalls. They did not see him. They saw a case number. They saw opportunity. They saw convictions. They operated selfishly for themselves and their careers with abject indifference to humanity and with complete and utter disregard for equity and truth. This was not justice, it was convenience. Now let's look at the 4 corners of justice diagram. The final score is minus 15. That number is not symbolic, it is diagnostic. It tells us that this was not an accident. It was a system functioning as designed. The defendant begins with compromised integrity, not because of guilt, but because of disability, and that makes him vulnerable. The system is supposed to compensate for that. It did not. The electorate failed by accepting a culture where plea bargains replace truth and speed replaces equity. Lawmakers failed by allowing conspiracy laws to operate without meaningful intent requirements, laws broad enough to criminalize weakness, and that includes everyone. Investigators failed by ignoring facts that pointed away from guilt. David cashed checks once, and he refused to do it again. He repeatedly asked whether the checks were legal. The prosecutor failed most of all. Presented with disability, lack of intent, and clear signs of good faith, the prosecutor pressed forward anyways. Not for justice. He did it for convictions. The judge allowed the machinery to move forward without interruption. The defense lawyer failed to defend. Key witnesses like the cashier who could have confirmed David's caution was never heard from. There was no jury to bring common sense into the room, and the grand jury accepted a narrative stripped of context and humanity. Every corner leaned left. Every safeguard collapsed. This is why David Ingalls belongs beside Arlen Jones. Different eras, different facts, but the same injustice. Arlen Jones stole food to feed starving children and received a life sentence. David Ingalls cashed checks once, asked 3 times if they were legal, refused to repeat the act, and lost 3 years of his life. Both cases reveal the same truth. When intent is ignored, justice becomes punishment without conscience. David Ingalls did not fall through the cracks. He was processed. And this is the most dangerous revelation of all, because systems that fail occasionally can be corrected. Systems that operate smoothly while doing wrong are the ones that must be confronted. This is why the 4 corners of justice diagram exists. Not to accuse one bad actor, but to expose a culture that no longer distinguishes between enforcing law and the complete destruction of human beings. And this is absolutely contemptible. And as always, may truth reign supreme.